Alrighty. Hello.
Hi.
Hello,
I'm Haley.
Amy.
Lori.
This is Hugo Girl, the Hugo Award-winning podcast, where we talk about books that win Hugos and also books about ships. This month we read the magnum opus that is Mirror Dance by Lois McMaster Bujold. It won both the Hugo Award for Best Novel and the Locus Award for Best Science Fiction Novel in 1995. Do we have any housekeeping?
A little bit. We have not exactly a correction corner, but a context corner from our Blue Sky friend Ed Moreland, because last time we read Fountains of Paradise by Arthur C. Clarke, and it's set on Sri Lanka, and we were talking about, is this a little bit racist? Is it not? I think we were sort of undecided. And so Ed shared a link to a post by Vajra Chandrasekhara. And Vajra has a book on the best novel shortlist this year, The Saint of Bright Doors, which I've read, and it is really good. And he actually has an article about exactly this, because he is from Sri Lanka, and his father was writing and publishing books in Sri Lanka the same time that Arthur C. Clarke was. And in part in the article, I'll just read a short quote from it. The question is not, or at least not only, is this book racist, but how much easier it was for that book to be published and reviewed and cited and canonized than a contemporary work by an author from the place the book is writing about. He goes on to say, it is probably a fine book, referring to Fountains of Paradise. It is probably a fine book in the tradition of books that use Sri Lanka as setting or inspiration, but Clarke, as an almost ludicrously privileged Englishman, sahibing it up in the colonies, had several orders of magnitude more access to the Western publishing industry than anybody who lived on the island in 1979. And that is a very good point. And it's a very thoughtful article, so I think it's definitely worth reading. Also, his novel is worth reading. And he just had a really good interview on the Coode Street podcast, which is also a Hugo finalist.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not just what stories people tell or even how they tell them, but whether they get to tell them at all.
And that's a good point to mention, because not everything people do is out of malice. It's just out of, things you don't consider.
This is a privilege thing for sure.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I would ever say someone who lived in a place for 50 years couldn't write a story set there.
Right.
But it's worthwhile to acknowledge that the only reason you can do that is because of who you are.
Yeah. And I think he does that very thoughtfully and very thoroughly, and it's a good read.
Yeah.
So I encourage people to check out his blog.
Cool.
The end.
Contextualized.
And thanks, Ed, for sharing that with us.
Yeah. For our plot summary, I have 3 paragraphs. It's going to be real quick. It's real tight. I'm leaving out a lot of details.
That's amazing.
Well, all you had to do was cut out all the rapes, and then you're left with 3 paragraphs, right?
Only one person was actually raped.
Cut out all the sexual abuse.
Alrighty. Bar-Yaran nobleman and military hero Miles Vorkosigan has an alter ego, Admiral Naismith. He also has a clone named Mark, who was raised separately to be an assassin. Mark pretends to be Miles/Naismith and convinces his band of Dendari fighters to set out on an attack of his former clone breeding ground. There, clones are raised to maturity, then killed, while their progenitors' old brains are placed in their perfect young bodies. The rescue doesn't go off without a hitch, though, and Miles finds out what's happening and swoops in to rescue. He gets shot in the chest, though, essentially dying, though a medic places him in an emergency cryo tank. Mark and the clones escape off-planet. The medic ships him off somewhere, but we don't know where. Uh-oh, where could he be? He got lost at the UPS store.
Oh, he is moving within the network, and he is en route to his next destination.
In the ensuing messy middle of the book, Mark has to pretend to be Miles, and even gets to travel to the homeworld of Barayar to meet Miles/his parents. With their help, he finances a ship to rescue Miles, who has been put back together by a clone medical group, but has amnesia. Mark gets captured by Ryaval, Miles' old nemesis, and is then tortured horrifically and graphically for a week straight. He manages to escape, killing Ryaval. He is reunited with Miles at the end, and all's well that ends well.
Perfect.
That's about as short as you can get it.
Yep.
Good job.
I
think that was good.
Let's jump right into goodies from Goodreads. I have 3. 2 are long as 1 is short. I will start with my short one. This is Roger gave it 2 stars. He says, "Not very good. I have had enough of this author."
I saw that one.
I like this one. There is a fine line. This is from Dr. Meow. There is a fine line between edge of your seat suspense and, oh, please, not again. Bujold not only crosses that line with this book, but proceeds to run a half marathon once she gets across the line. And then the third one is not so much a goodie, but a serious take on the book. This book contains intersexphobia, mental illness, absolute self-loathing, eating disorders, sexual assault, flashbacks of sexual torture, actual torture such as force feeding and chemical skin melting, and outdated language regarding mental systems and intersex people. If you are sensitive to any of these themes, this may not be an enjoyable read for you.
We should probably just put that at the top of the
Yeah,
episode. I had that down until I found my Joe one. But
That is a fair warning for the book and for the episode. Because
For
you
real.
can't talk about the book without talking about that.
And this might be the most trigger-worthy book we've read.
No kidding.
100%.
And that's saying a lot.
And we've read the wind-up.
I was about to say that.
Yeah, and it's also, I have more boob talk than anything we've ever done.
I read the first boob talk that I came across to Kevin, and we spent like 3 minutes just laughing and laughing and laughing. And then I was like, well, now I don't feel okay laughing about her. A few pages later, I was like, oh, no.
It's still kind
It's
of
still
comical.
funny. It's still funny.
I mean, that's the thing. I think Lois does a lot of that. Like, there's a lot of humor amongst some very dark things.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's just the way this book goes. Can I say my Joe one before I forget
Yes.
it? Yes. Doing it out of memory.
A jab from Joe.
Yeah, Jab for Joe. Joe loves this book. It's her favorite Verkosigan book.
Had her 10-year-old read this book.
She did.
What?
And he couldn't go to school because Miles was dead.
He was so
upset.
Well, I guess he doesn't read as fast as she does, huh?
Oh, no. He read most of it in one night. He was 10.
Joe. Okay.
She wrote about how she waffled about whether or not to let him read it because it had adult themes. The ones she was talking about was more the torture and not so much the sexual assault, but she did finally let him read it.
yeah, she's like, I mean, probably whatever his head.
Regarding torture versus sexual assault, I refer you to the Office meme. It's the same picture.
My Joe review, my goodie from Joe, my jab from Joe was it's about identity. It's about survival. It's about living your best life using multiple personality disorder.
True. Okay, I have two. They're both 1-star reviews. The first one is from Joan, and it says, "Do not like science fiction."
That's how we talked to.
And then I have a 1-star review from Kate that is also one word, as follows: "Yikes."
Yikes.
There was a lot of yikes in here.
And those were good enough for me.
That reminds me of that meme where someone on Instagram was like, if you pay me $5, I'll go to your ex's Instagram and find selfies and just comment, yikes. Well, I read this book after y'all did. I just finished it last night. And when y'all said all this book is soap stuff, y'all were 100% correct.
I mean, come for the amnesia, stay for the evil twins. And the secret decoder ring.
This book is so funny.
Several people I was reading a ton of the goodies from Goodreads, or just the Goodreads. And
The
people were-
reviews.
Yeah, the reviews. As you normies call them, yeah. And people were like, I was just so emotionally affected by this book, like in a good way. And I was just like, I mean, I thought of it as kind of like a pulpy space trash.
I cried several times reading this book.
Really?
I was really sucked into this book.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked.
I was also off my meds though.
I mean, I guess, I don't know. I thought it was fine, but I wasn't like tearful over things.
I
so,
think
yeah.
that's.
I liked
reasonable.
Barryar a lot more.
Oh, see, I was the other way around.
I still find her books very readable.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
for me, it was at least not a slog. I wasn't like, it's so boring. I was kind of bored during the initial raid on the clone colony. I was like, this has been going on for so long.
I liked it because it was falling apart. I was very interested that this whole mission was just going absolutely sideways.
That's fair, and it does keep going further and further sideways. I liked the dramatic escapes toward the end, but yeah, at the beginning, I was just like, I get it. Can you just get shot and get off this planet?
When Miles was being held captive in, like, I guess some medical facility.
With the clones, or?
By
Dorona.
the,
Yeah, the doctors
when he was
Dorona.
with the doctors.
Yeah, yeah.
The doctors Dorona.
Yep.
When he was getting in, there was a lift he kept getting in. Do you just get in this thing bodily
I think it's like
and
the
get
one with
moved
the
around like a
American
piece of
in.
mail?
I think so. It's like
Okay.
at the bank.
Like, am
you know?
I picturing this right?
Yeah, that's right.
Because then they kept being able to touch the walls, and I was like,
Yeah,
what is
I think
happening
it's like a gravity field, which is why at the end Mark was like worried that it was some kind of trap, and he kind of stepped out gingerly, and then he was melting those hand holes.
here? Right. That's right.
I think there's no actual box in the elevator.
Okay. I was
It's
just making sure I was crazy.
Science
That
in
just
the
popped
elevator.
into my mind. I was going to say, this was the Baryar did not do this, but when I read this book, it actually made me want to go back and read all the Vorkosigan books.
Oh.
Because apparently this one is not a great one to read without having read the ones that came before it.
Okay.
Just because of some of Miles's characterization.
I guess because we don't know anything about Miles. And like,
Right.
So Joe's son was just like, I love Miles so much and he's dead. And I was just like, you mean this guy I don't know?
I mean, I was trying to think of any other book I've read where the hero was dead the whole time.
I thought that was a pretty interesting
It's
device.
very interesting.
I would like to know how Joe and her son talked about Miles, our hero, getting a 60-second blowjob from an intellectual 10-year-old.
About a minute later.
About a minute.
Okay, I actually went back and read that. He did not know she was young.
Yeah, he did.
No, he didn't. He figured it out. Like, he started kind of putting it together after he talked to her for a while. He didn't know. He wasn't there.
It's unclear.
Mark knew.
Yeah.
Why did
Miles
he
did
then
not.
explain to her about boundaries and things and say,
I think
as you get older?
I think he started picking it up, but I don't think he actually knew she was
Oh,
only 10.
he started figuring out while his dick was in her mouth.
No, I think it was. I mean, yeah, actually, yes.
That is when men do their best thinking traditionally.
I mean, he did say something like, he said something like, this person is not my equal, but then immediately kissed her. So he was doing problematic
Yeah,
things.
it was
I ain't saying he was in the right, but
Okay,
Mark
well-
was way more in the wrong.
Okay, I feel better about that then.
It is
because
weird that she, like,
It's a whole weird scene.
she's like, I'm going to put this in the book.
So many choices. So many choices
Yeah.
made.
I mean,
So many
are
choices
we
made.
sure that this is not like, is she really a woman or is this like some guy?
Lois?
Yeah, like
No,
pig.
is she really a woman?
I know. Like, it's just like,
Lois is actually kind of a delight. It's very strange that she is in there.
Well, here's what I'll say.
Apparently the rest of the books are sexless,
Oh.
which is why it's so strange also.
Here's what I'll say about, well, remember in Barry R, we find out that in the previous book, Bothari was used as a rape war criminal, but like
Yep.
he was brain chipped or
And that
something.
came up in some of the reviews I read too because of Elena and how she is and her whole thing.
But I do think when I was reading these, I did not find it prurient in particular. I also think that the scene with Mark and Marie,
yeah.
Marie, an unusual thing about it is reading it from the perspective of the attacker and also how he is rationalizing everything that he's
As he goes
doing.
along, as he goes along.
And I just thought, like, I haven't seen something like that before. And so, obviously I didn't enjoy reading. I'm not supposed to enjoy reading it. So I think, I had a teacher in high school who said, if any author ever writes a rape scene that doesn't leave you feeling disgusted, the author has done you a disservice. And I think that certainly left me feeling disgusted. And in particular, because you were in his head. But I think another thing that works about it, too, is that when you realize what a victim he is, that you see how the abused becomes the abuser.
Right, hurt people.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know what. I read an interesting review or interesting thing that Joe said at some point, which was that Mark doesn't actually know what a human being is.
I think that's right.
And it's interesting to think of that in terms of when you're reading, like when you're first reading that scene, I think you're supposed to come away hating him.
Right.
Because we don't know him very well at that point. And it's kind of right after that, he goes and meets Cordelia and she starts humanizing him and giving him context. But that scene, I read it and then the aftermath and I was sitting there, I was just sort of sitting with it. I was like, why am I not more bothered by the inclusion of this in this book?
Yeah.
And I think it has something to do with that. It's the context of being in his mind, the immediate bad reaction from everybody. Like they were like, okay, well, you suck. You're staying in this room now. And like the appropriate response, he sort of had at least enough remorse to confess that he did it and take the blame off her, which was interesting because that was the worst part for him from when he was raped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a complex scene.
The other thing, I know. And that's why I think it, I don't know. I think I'm like okay with it because I think I see what she's doing and it is intelligent. I mean, it was difficult to read. I didn't like reading it, but
No, the whole time I was like, oh no.
I don't have to be happy the whole time I'm reading, but I do think it's, fair to warn people about it because it's really hard to read. But I think that also what you're seeing is Mark with no map trying to learn how to do right things. And he went to do a right thing, an overall right thing, liberate these people, and then ended up doing a very wrong thing to one of the people he wanted to liberate. But he has no map for doing right things.
How old is Mark?
Oh, I think he's 22.
He's 22.
In actual years, he's 22?
yeah.
Or bodily?
But apparently he is a little
he's
bit
a clone, too.
mentally stunted, I think.
He's a
couple
little
years behind.
older.
So he's been alive for 22 years.
He's 6 years younger than Miles technically, but his growth has been accelerated.
So I thought about that later. I was like, well, maybe actually he might be a kid too, but no, he's.
I was
But
hoping
still,
he was 10.
I don't think there's any excuse for sexual assault, even for people
I'm
who
not
are
excusing
victims.
it.
Yeah.
I'm not excusing
No,
it.
and I mean, most people who are assaulted don't go on to assault.
Yeah.
But also, this is a situation that doesn't really exist. I mean, they don't have a clone who's been kept in an abuse dungeon.
Yeah.
I am not excusing it. I'm not saying that he knew better, and he knew better because he was rationalizing it the whole time, and he knew immediately that he needed to fess up and say that this girl didn't have. I mean, he knew it was wrong.
So I just think that what she's done is effective because it is so complicated. You know, it's not just like a throw him out the airlock.
Right.
I think I take the opposite tack. I think it would have been more effective in the last 100 pages of the book, but the first 100, I don't know who this man is. A guy who doesn't know anything is doing something bad. Like, I wasn't even angry at him. I was just like, oh, I'm just reading this shitty scene. I don't know.
I guess I felt enough sympathy for him at that point to at least be thinking, oh, Mark, don't do this. Oh, don't do it. Oh, God, you're going to do it. Oh, don't do it.
And he's kind of saying the same thing in his head.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not going to do anything else. Well, maybe I'll just push it a little farther and it's awful.
I was just thinking from the perspective of Marie. She's like, well, I get rescued from this horrible place that I think might be good, and now
Now what's happening?
And I agree with you, and I think if there's one failing, it is that we don't get any of her perspective. We don't hear anybody say to her, this isn't your fault. Even though he took responsibility for it, I kept being like, Sergeant Tora, just say to her, you didn't do anything wrong. Because isn't the end of that chapter where she said, I just wanted a drink of water? And that just broke my heart.
It was awful.
But I wish that we had come back to her at least a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if at some point she did and she cut it or something. I would be curious to know.
She's like, I've got to edit one part.
Or in a later book, maybe in a later book, she comes back and puts a pillow over his face.
Yeah.
Well, apparently he gets therapy, but you don't actually see. He goes to beta colony and gets therapy.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't help that in the immediate lines preceding the assault, she's described kind of like a fembot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
I mean, she is. She's a little sex doll or something.
Yeah.
Oh, which also, I mean, it's Mark talking, but Mark says that he thinks that she must be for a sex change person because it's always people changing sex who want the like very exaggeratedly feminine bodies. And I was like, okay.
You know, Mark, he knows so much about the world.
I don't know. I mean, he did grow up in a clone creche, so I guess he's seen clone. I don't know. I just was like, wow, that's very transphobic. Who's telling me this?
I did not like the way that I don't like the way Bella's treated.
So I didn't either, and I would like to hear from readers if they wanted to reach out who identify as non-binary or who are intersex, and how if you've read this and how you felt about it. Because it was published in 1994, but I was like, I've never known a real person to use it pronouns. And when I was in college in like 2001 in a women's studies class, we learned the non-gendered pronouns per and z. And so I was like, I think in 1994, if she had wanted to, she probably could have found somebody to ask.
Belle's also an alien, though? Like, not like a human?
Yeah.
Is Belle an alien? I thought Belle was genetically engineered
I thought
human.
Yeah.
I just think that community's input would be valuable on it, this character and the use of the pronoun it. And I felt that it's unusual for a writer to include this kind of person in their book. And Belle is a nice person, a right-doing person.
And a well-rounded, I mean, she's a character that you get.
And who makes a big mistake, too, because Belle knew that Mark was not Miles.
They do seem a little bit fetishized throughout.
Yes.
Yes.
We're
my
constantly
brother.
being told about Belle's body. And
and both of them are maybe attracted to them, maybe kiss them, maybe don't. Like, why?
I just didn't like the continued use of the phrase "the hermaphrodite" instead of referring to Belle by their name.
I kept being like, is there anywhere where you say the woman or the man? No, they.
We must never forget that this is a hermaphrodite.
Oh, although Marie is repeatedly called the girl.
That's true.
Oh, Lois. Whew.
Oh, Lois.
They say mirror dance in the title, and it's like in the movie Face Off when they say Face Off.
I watched that recently.
I don't have a ton of deep thought questions. I just have like one-off thoughts that I had.
So if you could put your brain in a younger version of your body, would you do it? If you weren't actually having to scoop somebody else's brain out?
Absolutely. I would love my 25-year-old body.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm very scared of the idea of a brain transplant.
Assume that it will be safe.
Yeah, assuming it be safe. Yeah. Assuming it would be successful. I would do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I would love to have some knees again. Mm-hmm. That'd be great.
I would have to moisturize so much.
I think it
No, I
depends
would start
on-
moisturizing earlier.
Exactly.
I think it depends on if Kevin was doing it too. If you're getting old, I'm getting old with you. If you're not getting old, I'm not getting old. Are you getting old, Kevin? Kevin says yes, he would get old.
I asked my mom, I think the last clone book we read, I was like, if I had a clone, would you want to hang out with it? And she goes, I don't know. Probably. Because it's weird. And like, I think that's one of the most interesting things in this book is, you know, this is your clone brother or sister. They are everything about you, but different. Or maybe they're the same. Like maybe you have the same tendency to like biking or to read fast, or I don't know, but.
It's probably like twins, identical twins who are separated and then they meet and find out what things they do and don't have in common. Maybe something like that.
But I think like, well, and so there's a lot of emphasis on this book put on inheriting because, you know.
Well, the only wealth is biological.
Exactly, yeah, which I do not agree with at all.
I did not really understand that.
I think he's just saying family is the only wealth or something like that.
Or health is your health is your wealth.
Yeah.
Well, then why not just, it's just weird because sometimes families don't get along.
Right. I didn't agree with that.
I truly
sentence.
don't know what he means.
I didn't agree with that takeaway, whatever it was.
Yeah. But it was very nice of them to accept Mark for the most part.
I mean, our girl Cordelia was doing a lot of heavy lifting here. I mean, a lot of heavy lifting.
Well, yeah. Well, Errol was like hung up for half of it. So
I know. Poor Errol having his heart attack. All these strong men being taken down by shots to the heart.
Speaking of Cordelia and Errol, one guy on Goodreads left a funny point. When Mark reveals that he was raped with a shock stick, Cordelia explicitly states that Errol is bisexual and asks if he has a problem with that. Why did she immediately do that?
I do not remember that conversation.
I do.
I do. It was weird. Like, all of a sudden, she's like, and so the guy on Goodreads was like, because, you know, torture and homosexuality are somehow linked, grown. So. She just seems very, like, black and white.
feel that she feels that it's very progressive to include these things at all. And maybe in 1994 it was. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because most books, well, like a lot of books don't even have a woman in them.
That's true.
So she definitely.
One of the reviews I read was Asimov never resorted to torture.
Yeah.
Oh, I read that too. But Asimov also never resorted to women.
Right.
Or like just men talking in rooms. I mean, I think I've only read Foundation, so I only know about him making men talk in rooms.
Well, and as we've learned from 80s and 90s women authors that do Hugos, they like to talk about a lot of weird stuff.
There's a lot of weird sex stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of incest.
I mean, she might be working out some curiosity here.
Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah. I mean,
I like that Errol is not necessarily attracted to men, but army guys.
Joe had an interesting thing that I was going to bring up. So I was talking to someone recently. If it was you guys, I'm sorry. I don't remember who it was. About what kind of books are like the male version of romances.
Oh, yeah, that was
like
us,
the
yeah.
sentimentality thing. And Joe said that male sentimentality is basically military ranks, mentorship, brothers in arms.
Oh, Band of Brothers.
And so
yeah.
there's a lot of masculine sentimentality in this book, which I thought was interesting.
When I saw the Mission Impossible movie with the Lady Gaga song in it, Haley, help me. What is it? What's the movie?
Oh, no, that's Maverick.
No, she did a
Was it
James
not?
Bond.
Oh no, you're right. You're
Yeah.
right. I
She did a
don't
James
know
Bond-
my.
no, it's Adele.
But that's not what I'm thinking of. The
Hold
one
My
with
Hand, yeah.
Tom Cruise in a plane.
Yeah,
What's
Maverick.
that?
Maverick,
It's
yeah.
called Maverick.
Yeah, it's Top Gun Maverick.
Top Gun.
Yeah, Top Gun Maverick, yeah.
Okay, different 2-word name series with what's his name in it?
Yeah,
the little
Top Gun.
fella.
Top Gun Maverick, yeah.
little guy.
Okay, so
That's a great song, too.
my God, now I've lost the thread.
Okay.
Okay, when I watched that, I thought to myself, the whole reason this movie exists is so that men can go sit in a dark movie theater and feel some feelings.
Yeah.
It's safe for them.
I think that's exactly right.
I cried and when he's like old, flying the plane, he's like, talk to me, Goose, because he misses his friend from 40 years ago.
Yeah.
It's sweet.
I
and
don't
he
even
like,
remember that. I watched it with my grandmother. She was savage. She kept going, "This looks fake," which is funny because it
Ouch.
actually wasn't fake.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's because she had motion smoothing on, and I couldn't figure out how to turn it off, and it did look fake. But ironically, it was actually not fake.
Yeah, no, and I read a lot of men's fiction, and there is, war is hard, and women, for the vast majority of history, haven't gotten to participate in it, and wives back home didn't know what was happening.
I get it, man. You're in the trenches with somebody.
Yeah.
Y'all develop this bond.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you've got your guys who are teaching you how to be a soldier and getting you through the
shit.
muck and
It's bromantasy.
Yeah.
watch them get honored with their pips. Come on.
But
Who wouldn't cry?
it is funny that there's not a series of books where men are just like, and then my wife made me a TV dinner Or like, just like the fantasy. Or maybe
She
that's
knows
just,
toast is my favorite.
I know. Why wouldn't they want to read sentimental things about the idyllic stuff that we've been fed that men like? I don't know.
Kevin, can you
Not all
speak
men
on
hashtag.
behalf of all men?
Not all men hashtag.
Kevin just closed his eyes and shook his head no.
well, and I've heard one theory that there are a lot of men that don't actually like their wives, as we talk about sometimes.
right.
And like the loves of their lives are their guys they go fishing with.
Truly.
A healthy relationship has two people that actually like each other.
Truly. Oh, bless.
What else? Every time I read the word Jackson's Hole, and it's not even spelled wrong. It's spelled the right way.
Well, Jackson's Hole in America is not spelled with a W.
Exactly. But it seems worse that it's spelled with a W.
Jackson Hole in the U.S., right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think so.
Isn't it? I meant to look it up and I forgot. Kevin's
Jackson
nodding.
Hole. Jackson's Hole.
Yeah,
Jackson's
I didn't get the joke. I felt that there must be some joke there, but I didn't get it.
Maybe we learned that in Brothers in Arms.
Oh, I want to say something.
Yeah.
To the haters.
Oh.
Who get mad about people who haven't read the whole series.
We're gonna get letters.
How dare we?
Because here's what I want some of you folks who may be young to know.
Okay, go ahead.
In the olden days, such as 1994, you would go to the mall and you would go to B. Dalton or you would go to Walden Books or you would go to Book Nook, the used bookstore in Atlanta that was next door to Win Fair, the head shop that my parents were fans of. And you would go and you would buy whatever book was there. And so if it was Babysitter's Club number 92 and you hadn't read 90 or 91, you were going to get Babysitter's Club number 92. And let me tell you what else about Babysitter's Club. Chapter 2 always gives you the whole backstory.
Exposition, baby. Exposition, baby.
So,
our girl loves some exhibition. Exposition? Exposition.
In that vein,
She does in this too.
authors wanted you to be able to buy whatever book was on the shelf and not be like, oh, I can't read that because I haven't read all the ones that come before it. So Lois even says, and this is in the author's note on a reading order guide, that it will be to a degree enriching if you do read them all in order, but she wrote them with the idea that anybody could pick up any book and enjoy it. So
haters.
I don't want to hear from any haters about, oh, they haven't read Men at Arms or
Shards of Honor.
The Vor War or whatever. I don't want to hear it.
This apparently does have some spoilers in it. I read an interview with her where she says, she backs this up again. She says, I want everybody, you should be able to read anything in any order. She says she'd caution you against doing that with this one because it needs so much context for you to get what she's doing.
Great.
But again,
I could see it being
she doesn't
better.
go back on what she said though.
Yeah. I mean, if you really loved and knew Miles, it might have
She
a little
said
more
what she
heft.
said.
Yeah, that's true.
She said what she said, but if I went to Walden Books and this was the only one on the shelf, I bet she would be like, yes, please spend $3.95 on this paperback.
Borne out because this was the one, after reading this, I'm like, maybe I'll go back and read all about Miles. So see, it works.
I went to fandom.vorkosigan.saga or whatever, and I read about Miles.
Yeah, he seems like a cool guy.
He's apparently quite the hothead who gets into scrapes. And then he's like, how do I get out of this scrape?
After the first couple of chapters, I thought to myself, this guy fucks. He's got so many girlfriends. And I thought, I really want to make that the title of the episode, but I'm not sure Apple Podcasts.
This guy bucks.
This guy bugs.
Oh, this guy ducks like autocorrect. This guy ducks.
Yeah, it was cool seeing some of the things from Barriar, like uterine replicators, and like seeing, the results, all the work that went in to save him and the tetragenic poison. He was so fun. He's just short.
Another thing I read was the difference between the Barriar characterization we get in Barriar versus the Barriar characterization we get in this book. Like in Barriar, we kind of hate Barriar.
Yeah.
And
so
then
strict.
In this book, it's like, oh no, but look, see, this is actually pretty comforting in some ways. Like if you compare this to some other ways you could be living out in the universe.
Yeah.
So I thought that was an interesting little flip.
Remember when Dr. Dorona was like, I'm not going there with you. That backwater?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's futile. It is a backwater.
Well, and I appreciated Cordelia's speech too, because the idea of uterine replicators, and she's like, why would you want to be with a man that would make you give birth with your body where you can die?
That is such a good litmus test.
Mark had a line about that in this book too. He said that to Corrine, whoever, I think it was his love interest.
Mm-hmm.
He said something about why would a man do that to his wife or something like that.
And they're like tradition.
That's good. That's a good line.
Oh man, Cordelia has so many good zingers in this book.
She's in rare form.
She just like walks on stage says something very snippy or sharp and then drops the mic and swishes away in her gown. So I liked it when he was like, oh, well, I've never had a birthday because I wasn't born. I was extracted from a uterine replicator. And she's like, I was too. Everyone in beta is. We call it a birthday.
Yeah.
It's like, burn.
I'm just glad it's not like every other sci-fi or fantasy book where it's like life day, name day. Like, just call it a birthday, please.
How many winters old are you this year, Haley?
My lady mother. Just call it your mom. For casting, I think I mentioned that he's roughly the same height as Peter Dinklage.
Yep. Peter Dinklage.
Oh, is he?
If this was made in 1994, it'd be Peter Dinklage.
Our friends, Hugo Knotts, did an episode on one of these books, and they also said that he's basically a proto-Tyrion Lannister. I wouldn't have thought of that on my own. I thought that was a very good observation.
I think I was picturing him.
Once I learned his height, I then Googled how tall is Peter Dinklage, and the difference is only 4 inches.
So we do learn his height?
4'9".
I don't know if I remember reading that.
But poor Tyrion Lannister, that guy fucks, but he has to pay. Like, does he have any non-professional girlfriends in Game of Thrones?
No.
Tyrion?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Well, he marries Sansa.
He does?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On purpose?
Yeah.
To help protect her.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I mean, he has his Tyrion reasons.
Yeah.
And everybody else has other reasons.
Yeah, he doesn't have like 17 partners like Miles does, though.
No. But Miles seems to be really into all these people.
Everybody is really into Miles. Everybody's very horny
and everybody
for him.
seems to... I can't tell if people know about each other or not.
Oh, about his identities?
No. About, like, I can't tell if all the girls he's loved before
Oh, yeah.
I thought that
all know
too.
about each other or not.
I feel like Quinn would cut a bitch.
But also, like, maybe he made out with Tora.
You were right, he did.
Oh, he did.
And I'm not even sure what Tora is. So
She's a wolf lady?
I thought it was like a lizard lady.
I was picturing wolf.
I pictured very, very tall Chitara from Thundercats.
I pictured Bosk from Star Wars.
I don't know what I was picturing, but it had a muzzle.
It wasn't sexy in my head.
Yeah, I'm gonna need more.
And I always wondered that with Star Wars. Like, could a Wookiee and a human have a baby? I don't know.
We don't know that Tara could have a baby with you.
Exactly. I mean,
Well, yeah.
they could probably have sex, maybe.
Yeah, you don't need to be able to procreate.
That's true.
To stick it in something.
Yeah.
To put it delicately.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
One thing that I think bugged me the most about Lois's prose style, besides, she's compulsively readable, she's got a good turn of phrase here and there, all of the characters have interjections that make them sound like Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park. It's always like, so, life finds a way. Mark, where's your clone? And she does it so often that it takes me out of it. Occasionally, I think it would help add.
Notice.
It would take it out. It could add to, like, breaking up diction when it's done sparingly.
Just the ums.
But if you look in, like, random... There's so many in between, or ellipses.
That's so funny.
I never noticed that before.
I noticed. Yeah, there's so many ellipses. It's like texting my mom.
It's like on every page. I didn't even notice this.
Your mom does love a ...
I think it's a boomer thing. I have friends at work that ...
Man, and you shouldn't do more than 3 dots. Okay, so I gave my lecture to the young people. Now I'm going to give my lecture to the ... dotters.
Just the 3, guys.
Just 3.
Just 3.
Life lessons from Lori.
Just 3.
It's again to bring up The Office. Kelly on The Office is like 2 dots is a typo. 3 dots is like normal, and then 4 dots. What does she say? 4 dots is? I don't know. Well, watch The Office; it'll explain it to you. Anyway, don't do more than 3. It's 1 or it's 3.
I want to go back to interspecies snorkeling for a second,
Yes.
because it reminded me of one of my favorite Lower Decks episodes where a megalomaniac robot has sex with a life-size hawk man.
How does that work? Cloaca?
Yeah, good question.
That sounds fun for them.
We don't see anything below the waist while they're doing this, but he looks like he's enjoying himself.
I mean, there are so many weird human fetishes now, especially, that I can only imagine if we, like, added 7 new species.
Is that from Water?
Shape of Water.
Shape of Water. Kevin's over here making crude.
Speaking of weird
crude gestures.
There's one point in this when I think it's Mark is like hacking into a computer, and he goes, and then the software opened up like no woman ever had.
Oh my god! I was like, why? First of all, he is only 22. I mean, it's like it's okay that you haven't had a girlfriend. Friend.
You've been tortured in prison for.
I mean, he's got such incel vibes. Like he's thinking about a computer, and he's like, this computer is more willing than the girls are. Well, of course it is. Of course course it is.
It's not a human.
So is the car door. So is the refrigerator. You know, they're designed to just open on command.
Sometimes when I was reading this, it was like, did she write this for 18-year-old boys? Because when Miles is coming back to life and he gets an erection and he's like, a res-erection.
Oh, that's why the episode title has to be Res-erection.
Okay. Done.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't giggle. It's a pun. I love puns, but I was like, groan.
Right. There was a bunch of groaners in there, for sure. I don't know. I'm okay with a dad joke in there.
The word gray is mentioned 76 times, which is about every 8 pages.
Oh my God.
Gray?
The gray ship's closed. Gray ship.
Gray ship knits.
The ship knits.
Yeah.
They did sound comfortable, though.
I feel true.
Are we going to talk about Mark force feeding himself?
Well, yeah. So we can talk about Mark's relationship with weight and food and how Lois depicts it is very problematic.
Very problematic.
And sad.
There's a lot of attention and paid to and fun made of Mark getting larger.
It could have been easily done. Like, he looks physically different from his progenitor because like his bone structure is like, he literally is bigger boned. He's got a stouter frame, but they just keep going. You probably hear every 3 pages about how he's fat.
She literally has him compulsively overeating to make himself even bigger, which leads to even more comments about it.
Which I think this is another thing where like she's onto something, but then the execution is sloppy because, you know, eating disorders are often about control. And that's exactly
100%.
He's avowedly doing that here.
Yeah.
He's like, I want control over my identity. I'm going to change my body accordingly. Yeah. And then he begins to eat in a way that does not bring him pleasure. And
becomes self-harm.
He feels not good, physically not good about it, but he wants a particular outcome for a particular reason. And that gives him a sense of control. And that's real. And the way people would treat a heavy person is also real.
Yes.
And then there's one moment where Cordelia says to Mr. Vorkosigan, she's like, he has a different metabolism. Like, this is just what his body wants to do. And that's true. Mm-hmm. But then they're like, once he goes to see the doctors, of course, he'll choose thinness.
Yeah.
He doesn't by the end of the book.
And he doesn't.
I do appreciate that they leave him big. And he's perfectly happy with it, apparently. Mm-hmm. I don't know what happens in the next books, but at the end of this one, he's just big. He still has a love interest. Yeah. Which is good. You don't always see that.
He's gotten some clothes that fit him.
He's got
that's
clothes
made actually a lot of difference.
Fit and look nice on him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some deftness with how she handles it, but it's also really packs on the fatphobia.
Yeah.
Like page after page after page. Like, you don't forget throughout the entire book. It's like,
people are constantly like, why are you doing that to yourself, even if they don't see him eat?
Yeah.
Right?
Or they'll just be like, oh, you look like shit.
Right. Yeah. Like,
or they're like placing some fault or some blame simply because of how his body exists. It's like, oh yeah, why are you doing that to yourself? Like, why are you making this choice? I don't know. It just doesn't feel good to read.
And the idea if people could choose the way they look, they would always choose thin.
Right. Like when he goes to the doctor, he'll choose a metabolism that makes him thin. But I mean, it is good that at the end he doesn't. And it was interesting too how occasionally we would get a glimpse of someone else seeing him and saying like, he looks strong, he looks serious, he looks older, he looks capable. So we get a little bit of balance there of like how he sees himself, how some people see him, and then how other people view him as strong, I think. But yeah, I feel like it may not feel good to read for a lot of people.
Yeah. And even at the end, Miles is like, I've got to remember not to have dessert. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Even when like he's been rescued and everything's good to go and all's well that ends well, it's like, well, don't forget he's fat.
Like, you were dead, Miles.
Yeah.
You were dead.
Have a pie.
He's like, oh, in my new lease on life, I'm going to make sure that I don't have too much dessert. Shut up. He has 19 girlfriends and he's been brought back from the dead. And it seems like none of the girlfriends are mad at him for all the girlfriends or the spare girlfriends or the weird blowjob that he got.
Girlish figure though.
But he's like, no dessert for me.
It's like literally everybody throws it.
I'm glad he knows what's important.
The relationship with Rowena could not have made me madder. There's no way in hell that would ever happen.
Oh, yeah.
He must be so charismatic.
Like, no doctor just jumps right in bed with their amnesiac patient.
Well, that's very unprofessional. Yes, but I guess like a clone doctor's office isn't necessarily
maybe it's
certified.
Different. They didn't do the do no harm thing.
Yeah, they're like
they also don't live out in the world, so maybe they don't
I did like that she got sick of him while they were living in the room
That was
together,
pretty
and
funny.
at the end of it, she was like, "I don't think we should be together."
That takes a lot of work to break up somebody when you're prisoners together. Got to work that shit out.
Yeah. I kept thinking about like the various ethical problems in this book, and then I would just be like, maybe in 1994, this maybe in the dark ages of 1994, doctors were always sleeping with their vulnerable patients.
They probably were.
30 years ago. It was 30 years ago.
30 years ago, maybe they were. Maybe they are
No.
now. I don't know.
Yes. 30 years?
I think
Yeah, it's 2024. Yeah, exactly.
one of the
30
things
years.
that I like about the now times is that we have so many ways to be accountable. Like, there's videos, there's instant publishing online. Like, you could just get away with more back then, I feel like, in a bad way.
I mean, yeah. I mean, by 1994, the internet was becoming a thing. I don't know if Lois was on it or not, but
it wasn't
Joe
like
was.
huge, though.
Joe
Like,
was at this time.
There was no
social
Twitter,
media.
though.
Yeah.
Well, Joe was talking about avoiding spoilers online when she waited for this book to arrive in the UK.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I meant like, posting on
But-
TikTok.
But right,
At the
there's
doctor's
the
office.
information is scarce.
Yeah,
even though
like
online-
news was only on TV, that kind of thing.
Right, so you don't get a lot of exposure to actual lived experience.
There's a big trend going on right now. Chipotle has been like really giving small portions lately. And when people videotape
That's not
it,
why I'm going to Chipotle.
well, exactly. And so people will videotape it and then like that location will be put on blast. And so now they're telling employees, if someone comes up with a camera, give them like a shit ton of food. So
Good to
I kind of
know.
love.
Yeah, there was no on blast in 1994.
No, I mean,
If you had a creepy doctor, you would just be like, well,
you would tell your friends and family, but
yeah,
like, how
that was awful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then your mother would be like, well,
What'd
you're
you do?
probably asking for it. Yeah.
At least our girl Marie was not painted as asking for it. At least we have that.
At least we have that. We never heard from the girl again.
Well, so that's what's funny, how she refers to some of these clones. Like, I know that they are people, but she kind of describes them as not like. One of my favorite sentences was, she held hands with the platinum blonde clone.
I was like, are we
there's such a-
humanizing or are we not humanizing?
I know.
They're such a set piece.
Yeah,
in
they
this.
really are.
I don't even think we're supposed to really humanize them that much either. The point is giving Mark something to do that seems noble but is going to go horribly wrong.
Yeah. It is funny that none of them were like, thank you. And he's like, why won't they say thank you?
Oh, and then he gets thanked later, and it was really sweet.
Yeah, that was nice. Any more general discussion?
I have a pony prattle.
Oh, there is some pony prattle. I like that I share something with Miles.
Oh, I see indications that Miles is going to like horses.
No.
Mark or Miles?
Mark, sorry. Yeah.
Miles doesn't
We
know.
got them all mixed up. Because it worked.
Mark Pierre is a funny name. Is Mark a nickname for Marcus, or is it its own name also?
Apparently, it's its own name in this.
I think I've only ever heard of Mark. I have an uncle Mark named
Mark of the Bible, I think, was only Mark.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But then Marcus was definitely a Latin name.
Okay, so here's a little story from Barrearan history. Young Lord Vortala had allied with his father-in-law in the Zydiarch trade war. Vortala disinherited his son and somehow managed to maneuver a rump session of the counts into approving his horse Midnight as his heir, claimed the horse was just as bright and had never betrayed him. What... ... A hopeful precedent for me, Mark choked. How did Count Midnight do compared to the average count? Lord Midnight. Alas, no one found out. The horse predeceased the Vortals, the war petered out, and the son eventually inherited all. But it was one of the zoological high points of the council's varied political history, right up there with the infamous incendiary cat plot.
Oh, yeah. I remember
More
that.
about the cat plot. But yeah, I like the pony prattle in these books.
A lot of good pony prattle.
I think Mark, when he met Miles's horse and the horse was friendly to him, I think he was kind of like, okay, I think he might like horses eventually.
Yeah. I can see that. Bar Yar's a good place to do it.
I mean, it doesn't seem like there's a lot else to do. You can get drunk, you can ride horses, you can play the Game of Thrones,
You win or you die.
do the mirror dance. I like the mirror dance where you just copy what the other person is doing.
So voguing.
Haley's voguing and doing wax on, wax off.
I don't know how to dance.
This might be the only dance that I would ever be able to do. So I was into it.
But the thing is, if you're copying your partner, and maybe this is something that people do in some cultures, I don't know. But if you're copying your partner, aren't you necessarily always going to be just a hair behind?
Oh yeah, like, and even he is in this, like, always 2 breaths behind. They say.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that is a perfect dance for me, where it's like built in that you're kind of doing the wrong thing.
And all I got to do is what that other person's doing.
Well, and somebody, like, with partner dancing, somebody has to lead, so that kind of makes sense.
Really
That's
bad.
kinda like following.
I'm bad at both leading and following.
And there seemed to be no gender politics there.
That's true.
They do it at the end of Baryar, Cordelia and Arl.
I was
And
thinking,
she says that. She's like, no one can tell who's leading and who's following. And there
Yeah,
was a
that
little
is-
feminist
Oh, I don't
message
remember
there.
that. Cute.
I was thinking, I think there's like some version of Romeo and Juliet where they're like, their hands go together, wax on, wax off together.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about in Romeo plus Juliet
Maybe.
in the movie?
Or maybe it's the old timey version because like they're like, our hands are blushing pilgrims or whatever.
Oh,
Yeah.
lips are blushing.
Yeah,
pilgrims.
that's right. That's right.
There's a lot of, speaking of blushing pilgrims, there's a lot of kissing in this book.
There's a lot of kissing.
Everybody wants to kiss everybody.
It's a weirdly like teenage horny book.
Yes. Except when it's assaulty.
Except when it's not.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Miles and Lily Jr. are in the cell, and he's like, well, there's nothing else to do. So it said that they engaged in necking for 20 minutes? They must be exhausted.
I know, and I've been reading all my sexy fairy books, and those have like actual sex scenes, and these are just like, then we kiss for 20 minutes. Our lips were raw.
I know. If they have facial hair, that doesn't end well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and they always talk about in the shower they're depilating.
Oh, shaving, yeah.
But is that what they mean, or do you think that they have
Depilating just
some...
means, just hair removal.
Yeah, I assume shaving.
I assumed
they're
nair.
shaving.
I thought they were
I
using
think
nair.
they have some kind of nair thing.
Do you think Nair works on like big, heavy man hairs?
I think in whatever year this is, yeah.
That's probably true.
Probably.
I mean, back in 1994, nair barely worked on your legs.
Exactly.
So-
Yeah.
Burned you.
Yeah.
You'd be like, oh, I'm smooth now. It's not a second degree burn.
Nice and red.
Oh, I should have said this earlier when we were talking about the it pronoun, but coincidentally, I've started reading Some Desperate Glory by Emily Tesh,
nice.
which is also one of the
Yep.
Hugo finalists this year. And the introduction to that book is an extract from like an in-universe book about humans. And it says, if a human uses a non-sentient pronoun such as it, you should assume they are trying to be insulting or even hostile. And I read that right after I finished Mirror Dance, and I was like, Oh, I have another Cordelia zinger that I really liked. When Mark is saying that he exists for the express purpose of killing Mr. Vorkosigan, Cordelia says, take heart. Most people exist for no reason at all.
Yeah.
This book did not make me cry, but it did make me chuckle from time to time.
Yeah.
Cordelia is savage. She would be like my grandma when she's old.
Cordelia is definitely my feminist favorite. Anytime she came on screen, I was like, is this Cersei? And she's just kind of like, yes.
She's a non-malevolent Cersei.
Yes, 100%.
Why are men constantly offloading their conscience to her? Like, she has to be all these men's emotional core.
Because, Amy,
Makes me
she's
mad.
not like other girls,
me
so they
mad.
can talk to her.
I do like that she brings her like beta feminist perspective to this like back world.
I do want to know more about beta
Yeah,
colony.
same. Maybe one of these books is about
I
that.
think Wargame, puts you there a little
I
bit.
bet there's like 17 of these books about it.
That's true.
And Mark goes there.
This is Vorkosigan Club number 7.
Not to spoil it, but apparently Mark and Keely,
Quinn.
nope.
Kareen?
Yes. I think they settle on beta colony at some
That's
point.
nice.
I think. God, people are going to come after me. But that's what I understand.
Don't. Don't do
I'll find out later. Don't come after me.
I'll fuck you.
The Vorkosigan gonna come get you.
The Vorkosigan Bayhive.
The Vorkosigan BTS hive. Actually, though, so for feminist favorite, I love Cordelia, but I also love how many female characters are. We got Quinn, we got Elena, we got Tora. It's fun.
I did really like Tora.
Tora's cool.
I feel like I had a good feminist favorite, and it was written down on my notes, and I don't have those, so I can't think of it. Anyway, my misogynist moment is the seal of virginity. Did y'all remember reading that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the clones have to be virgins.
The seal of virginity.
I pictured it like a piece of paper.
like a notarized,
like
a notary
panty liner
stamp.
that comes in a bathing suit.
You got it.
The bathing suit. That is
the bathing suit
so
crotch
fucking
paper.
gross, man. I'm like, I would just rather
Disgusting.
because you have to touch it to put your new bathing suit in the washing machine. I would rather you just give me the bathing suit that other people have tried on and
Not
I'll put it
not
straight in
make
the
me
washing
touch the
machine.
crotch.
I don't want to touch it.
This is like when I went to try on before the Hugo's when I had my tuxedo and I wanted a pair of Spanx and they're like, you can't try these on. I was like, I'm going to wear my underwear with them. I just want to see if they roughly
It's funny
fit.
that you can't try on Spanx, but you can try on bathing suits.
It doesn't make any sense.
That's stupid. And I bet if you took a pair of panties into the try-on room, you could try those on.
You can try on off-brand Spanx at Target.
I was at Target.
Oh, really?
They were just like, oh, you can't go in with those. I was like, all right.
Oh, I did.
Well, I think I got the one person who was new that thought she had a job to do. Like,
She cared.
She cared. Because every other time they're just like, how many? 3? Whatever. Like,
Yeah, I've got 10 things. Can you give me a thing that says I have 2? Because I'm going to steal 8. And they're like, okay. I haven't been paid overtime in 6 months. Okay.
yeah.
Okay, you said your misogynist moment?
That's the one I can think of.
Oh, okay. Mine is, I said, pretermitting all the sexual violence. I'm not going to go for one of those because I wanted to pick something.
Low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging
Definitely
fruit.
low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. It was when Ivan Vorpatril, is he a Vorpatril? When Ivan Vorpatril calls the big Bridgerton parties that they have to
They
go
were
to.
Bridgerton parties.
Quote, the biennial cattle drive where all the high vor heifers are trotted out for inspection.
Oof.
Bitch,
Now-
Ivan, what are you?
Now, is that an indictment of the women or an indictment of society?
I mean, he called them heifers,
Yeah,
though.
that's fair. That's true.
So, yeah, like
the man had a metaphor.
the
He was sticking
actual
with it.
complaint underlying all of this is
Yeah,
the
that's
social
a good one.
structure, but he's, of course, holding these girls who have no other option, really, responsible
Yeah.
for the fact that he doesn't like it. Meanwhile, he's there.
He's just getting drunk in the backyard.
He's crying in the gazebo.
yeah. In true Bridgerton fashion.
And all the women are like, oh, and all these little man babies are trotted out for inspection. But
Yeah,
that
I
happens
would
off
have liked
camera.
to have heard Corrine say that.
Fidelka.
She wouldn't because she's very nice.
She is nice. I went for the low-hanging fruit of including the creepy molestation scene by Mark on the clone that has a 10-year-old brain.
Yes, I mean, it's hard to get past that.
Somebody have her breasts for their boob talk?
Oh, yeah. I have.
Okay. I
All right.
didn't do that one because I was like, that.
I mean, she's constantly holding them and
She
moving
has to carry them with her arms.
This may be not only the sheer amount of boob talk may rival anything we've read, some of the worst. It's up there with breasting boobily.
Mine was Belle's compressed breasts.
All right, let's dive in. All right, we have modest but distinctly feminine breasts, referring to Belle. We have a stunning bust line, huge fat globes that the strained pink silk of her tunic failed to contain. Guess who that is? Marie.
I read that to Kevin. That was the one where we were having a good laugh.
Her
And then we felt bad.
Yeah, her steps made her breasts wobble most distractingly.
The wobble is
they're-
always good.
She has unholstered breasts. Imagine
Unholstered.
what would happen in Zero G.
Oh,
They would just be wobbling.
She'd have 2 black eyes.
They would hang like pomegranates. At one point, Mark just wants a rub between those vast breasts. Vast? Like the prairie?
Like mountains.
vast.
Then we have a lovely cleavage, framed in raspberry pink gauze with white lace trimmed delicate.
That one was mine.
It's not the meat, it's the motion. That's not boob talk. That's some dick discussion. That is the space equivalent of...
Ball
Says it's
banter.
not the meat, it's the motion.
At one point, I think Mark says, I've heard that's the case. Like, it's not how big it is, it's how you use it.
Who does he say that to?
That?
He's saying it like as a general axiom about penis size.
I missed
To
that.
whomst? To himself?
It's one of his thoughts, yeah. He's like, I heard it's the meat, not the motion.
One of his quiet thoughts. That
Or no, it's not the meat, it is the motion.
man, we didn't even get to his torture.
One of his thoughts that he doesn't realize we're all reading.
Yeah.
We didn't even get to his torture and his multiple personalities.
That's okay.
Forgot about that.
Oh.
Oh, well.
It was less interesting than some people made it out to be.
There's a lot of
I thought
torture.
it was actually okay.
We could add it back in.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's fine.
All right, so that was our boob talk. Any more? Did I miss?
Belle's compressed breasts.
Bell's compressed breasts.
Nah.
So sometimes you gotta strap them down.
Well, I
don't know what
when
that
you're on
meant.
a spaceship.
compressed.
Were they,
Like when you wear a sports bra?
yeah.
I couldn't tell if they were just like small
Like compact, maybe.
Oh.
because they were small but distinctly feminine
True.
at one point.
You know, unlike those masculine breasts.
Distinctly feminine breasts. Oh, God bless.
Huge fat globes. You ever seen a boob?
I think that we're supposed to see Marie as pretty grotesque.
Right, yeah. She's
And so I think
a caricature.
The description of her is, I think, purposefully cartoonish.
I wonder if that makes it better or
I don't
worse.
know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because, like,
Vast.
I don't know.
That.
7 acres long.
How many hectares are your breasts?
All right. I couldn't remember any food because it's such.
I wrote one down.
There was a lot of force feeding of high caloric syrups. I was like, ugh.
I got grilled vat steak, fresh appearing vegetables, a non-synthetic coffee, the hot food hot, and the cold food cold.
There was some time when they had brillberry tarts for dessert. And
Ooh,
I thought,
brillberry.
that sounds good. I like all berries.
Yeah, that's true.
I'll eat any tart.
Fresh appearing vegetables.
Fresh appearing vegetables.
Fresh appearing. They looked fresh, but they were not.
Soap stuff. The whole book is soap
the
stuff.
whole book.
Okay, so yeah, if forced to pick one, the one that I pick is one man with two identities, and I had to go look at.
What are you talking about?
Miles.
Miles from the Admiral.
Yeah, I actually had to go and look when he was telling somebody about, the original one is Lord Vorkosigan, and I'm his clone, Miles Naismith. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And so then I had to go to vorkosigan.saga.fandom, et cetera, et cetera. So I was like, what's going on here? And then I was like, he is one man with two high-profile identities, which made me think of Jem and Jericho.
Yes.
Or like Clark Kent and Superman, if you prefer. Although Clark Kent wasn't a high-profile person.
No.
But Jem and I think Jericho was like a music executive, which is wow, what kind of nepotism is that?
Yeah.
You give yourself
Nepo
a job.
baby.
She's like a nepo self.
I was just surprised because they have the same face, Admiral Naismith and Miles, and they're both two high prominent men.
Yeah. I don't see how he's threading this needle, but somehow he is. And I thought that was extremely soapy.
Yeah.
I think I would have to go with the amnesia. I think plus the amnesia romance. And then when he comes to, he's like, oh, my other women.
Yeah. That's a good one. Amnesia romance is good. I mean, real people do get amnesia, especially after like a coma or something.
Sure.
So I'm okay with that. But yeah, you're right. The amnesia romance is pretty incredible.
Meanwhile, his evil twin is posing as him.
And then he remembers Quinn and still accepts the blowy from Lily Jr.
Yeah.
That's after him. Oh, that's right.
He was concealing that he remembered
1
all this
minute.
stuff.
1 minute.
A whole minute. And I thought maybe Lois was just like, what's a small amount of time? 1 minute.
I mean, she said about a minute.
About a minute.
Could have been 90 seconds.
Sometimes like when lawyers are doing argument and they're talking about like, the defendant said, something was only 15 seconds. And then a fun trial tactic is then you pause and you stand in front of the jury silent and still.
The prosecutor did that to me during one of the first trials.
People realize how fucking long that is.
I hated it.
A minute?
Thanks, I hate it.
Was a really long time,
Oh, yeah.
Miles.
A minute?
A minute was a very long time.
He probably finished too.
Yeah, but he leaps across the room.
What was he? He was dangerously aroused or something like that.
Yeah. Some adverb.
Yeah.
Aroused.
Vast. No.
Vastly aroused.
He had a vast res-erection. So funny.
Has to be.
Did you like the book?
I guess.
I did.
I didn't hate reading it.
Yeah, it was
I had
interesting.
a good time. I enjoyed reading it. I liked it.
Yeah,
I unequivocally liked it.
I do like, now that I've 2 books into the Vorkosigan world, I could see why people like it, for sure.
I definitely like Barry R. better, but I think she's a good writer.
And she's created a cohesive world, universe, series of worlds. And, I like how there's continuity. So
Oh, I read about how she does continuity.
Mhm.
So she writes her notes out in a longhand on paper in a 3-ring binder.
Oh, wow.
And when she goes back to when she writes more books, she'll like just go back and read some of her books to see what she did. She doesn't have like a database.
that's awesome. It's like,
She needs a librarian.
Our girl's pretty old school.
yeah. Is this book Star Wars or Lord of the Rings?
Trick question. It's The Princess Bride
Oh.
because the hero is dead and then gets brought back to life.
Oh, I like that.
Counterpoint, there is no shortage of perfect breasts in this world.
Counterpoint. There's a lot of clones. There's
Clone
some
War.
more.
Clone War. I mean, yes. Clone War.
I said Lord of the Rings because Miles and Mark are kind of hobbity. Does that need to come come out.
No, that wins. That
maybe.
wins. No, they're both.
Can't just be like, lol, short people.
And I mean, Baryar is kind of shirey.
Yeah.
There's a lot of horses.
It's okay to say that two groups of people are short, and that's
Is
similar.
a Brillberry tart not Lord of the Ringsy?
It's second breakfast. Yeah.
It's second breakfast.
And all biological wealth is their precious. I don't know. Yep, that's all I got.
What's for next time?
I don't know.
It is A Fire Upon the Deep.
Oh, by Werner.
By
Vinge.
Werner.
Nice.
R.I.P.
Oh,
He just died.
R.I.P. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then, okay, then that we read. This is How You Lose a Time War in July for the August episode. Cool. We'll be on the plane a lot. I can
That's true. That's true.
read on a plane and have a poor understanding of the book because I read it on a plane.
Books on a plane.
Perfect.
I'm sick and tired of all these motherfucking books on this motherfucking plane.
Bye.
Bye.
You go, girl. You go, girl. You go, girl. A hilarious podcast.
I got my fried chicken costume.
I guess I should send off for my moo.
I forgot about your fried chicken costume, and Kevin mentioned it last night, and I laughed for like 2 minutes.
I'm trying to decide whether I should wear fishnet stockings with it.
Yes.
Well, I don't see any reason you shouldn't wear fishnet
I mean, the answer
stockings
to that
with
is
it.
yes.